Hi everybody, I'm Fred Williams from Dirt Every Day, and this is the first ever Dirt Daily. So what is a Dirt Daily? Dirt Dailies are short little videos that I'm going to be posting up to my personal YouTube page. Kind of just a little bit of touch and base about projects I'm working on, or little tech tips and things like that. We used to do stuff like this on the Motor Trend channel with our Dirt Everyday Extras, and there's still like 1,000 of those that you can go watch. This will be similar, but a little bit different. And also, if you don't know, I'm the host of Dirt Every Day, which is an off-road show on the Motor Trend app. So sign up and check it out. We have over 100 different episodes where it's me and my co-host Dave Chappelle, and we do all types of fun different projects, like the one that's behind me right here. I did a video on this, or we did a build on this Jeep. It's actually a Ford GPW. And we did a build on Dirt Every Day, and I talked about doing, like, answering some questions and doing a little quick walk around. So I wrote down a bunch of the questions that I got on the internet and figured I would answer them. I'm gonna lower this down a little bit so you can check it out. This Jeep has a V6 engine, 35-inch tall tires, and it's an old military Jeep frame, and then it has a lot of aftermarket parts on it. In fact, the whole tub, the whole body is not original. One question, I'm gonna just rattle through these questions and try to answer them as quickly as I can so that this video doesn't take all day. Somebody asked, why no cage or seat belts? In fact, this does have seat belts. We put seat belts in everything we build, except for like a motorcycle. And sometimes you probably couldn't see them because we had jackets on that may be covering up, but we always were very, it's very important that we wear seat belts when we're off-road. I think people that don't wear seat belts are just asking for trouble. As far as why not a full cage, why a roll bar? I guess that's a personal choice. We could have done more roll cage and not just a roll bar, but we felt that the roll bar would be safe enough for the type of wheeling we were going to do with this. Somebody asked about the seats. I have these kind of low bucket seats, and somebody asked what I thought of the seats. These are made by Stryker. It's a hot rod company, and I really dug them. They sit really low in the Jeep, and it gives you good support. Are they the most comfortable? I think you kind of get used to them. They're really minimal. Like, it's basically some plywood and like a metal frame and kind of like a vinyl cover. I really dig how they look. I like that you sit down low. There's no gas tank underneath the seats the way they do in a lot of the military, the old flatfender Jeeps. We put the gas tank in the back. In fact, somebody asked a question about that. What is the gas tank? The gas tank is actually an air tank I bought new from like a tractor store, and we plumbed it, we put some fittings on it, and it is mounted in the back of the Jeep. It sits in the bed, but it's kind of cut through, so half of it, it's actually attached to the frame with a hole in the bed, so the body kind of comes down. So it does take up some cargo space. You could probably build a nice cover over it. We didn't get that done in time. How short is the rear drive shaft? Well, I guess I should just raise this thing back up and we'll walk around with the camera and check it out. While I'm doing that, somebody asked about the tires. What do I think of these Toyo tires? I had never really wheeled with their mud tire very much, and I really dug how they worked on this Jeep. They're not on beadlock wheels, they're just on some like used aluminum wheels that I got from a friend of mine, but they seem to be pretty lightweight-ish. I mean, it's still a 35-inch tall tire, but with no beadlocks, we still aired down pretty good and went four-wheeling. The Jeep is pretty small and lightweight, so overall, it's not that heavy of a vehicle. Let's go back up and I'm gonna walk around underneath, answer some questions about the suspension and some other things that we did. All right, come with me. So, in the back of this Jeep, we put a link suspension. You can see here's a link. There's a center link. Over here's the other lower link. And then right up there and there are airbags. Why did we do the airbag suspension? Oh, there's also a track bar, which if we come back here, you can see the track bar. And there's that little gas tank I was talking about. Why did we do a link suspension instead of leaf springs? Why did we do airbags instead of coils? Why? Well, I guess because we just wanted to try something different. We've done leaf springs on a lot of stuff. Everybody kind of expected a Jeep to be on leaf springs. And I just wanted, and Dave is a big fan of airbags, and I just wanted to try them out. Overall, super stoked on how well this thing works. It's light. It doesn't beat you up. Even just like driving out of the shop, bouncing over a curb to get onto the trailer to haul it to Moab, like I knew instantly that it was a whole different ballgame. This thing doesn't beat you up and wear you out to run down the trail in it all day. You sit in it nice and low. The suspension's really cush. The shocks are just some like no-name blue shocks from the local auto parts store. We did put some Fox stickers on them. Hopefully that makes them ride even better. They're okay. But overall, really dug the suspension. Let's move up here. Here's that drive shaft. Everybody asked how short is the drive shaft because we used an automatic transmission. There's the fan of that Turbo 350. It's really not that short. In fact, you could have pushed the transfer case back a little bit more. So the thing is that when you use the Turbo 350 and you go to the Spicer 18 transfer case, there's really only two options for adapters. Advanced adapters, which is the adapter that we used, and Novak adapters. The Novak adapter is a little bit longer, which would really help with this front drive shaft. See how the front drive shaft has this tiny little 1210 U-joint, and then we had to modify the transmission pan and had to use like flat head bolts, and it's still, you can see the paint there where it's rubbed multiple times at full compression. Why the Turbo 350? Was it a problem? I guess it was just trying something different. I know that people had done Turbo 350s in Jeeps in the past. I wanted to try it out. It worked really well off-road once I kind of got the hang of it, but it does have this major flaw with you have to use a super tiny front drive shaft. The guys at Tom Woods Drive Shaft, there's their sticker. They built this drive shaft and got it to me in record time, and it worked great for Moab. They also built the rear drive shaft. If you're building a Jeep and you're looking for drive shafts, Tom Woods Drive Shafts, probably the way to go. What other things can I show you? Oh, somebody asked about the brakes. So the brakes on this thing was a major problem. And it was mostly because of the master cylinder being too large of a bore for the Jeep. You see, in the front, we ran disc brakes from my buddy Brennan's garage, where you use basically a rotor and a caliper off of a Geo tracker. And then for the pedal, we used an Advanced Adapters swinging pedal kit, which uses this old school style 2-barrel master cylinder and clutch cylinder. So what we did was we plumbed both sides of that to be a brake master cylinder. One side would go to the front, one side would go to the rear. Unfortunately, the pedal is super heavy. The bore on the master cylinder is too large, and the brakes do not want to engage, and you can barely stop the thing. So I'm making some changes to it. So far, well, the other problem was when I got home, the rear wheel cylinders were leaking. They were rebuilt back in the 80s on this rear end, but they had never had oil or brake fluid in them. So I guess the seals probably just dried out and rotted. And I thought about just rebuilding the wheel cylinders. And then my buddy Brennan at that Brennan's garage had a new disc brake kit for the rear, which is kind of neat because this uses a caliper off of a Lincoln Continental, 2017 Lincoln Continental. And it has an electric parking brake, one on each side. So I am going to try that out. So what I did was I yanked off all the drum brakes. Now I have disc brakes front and rear. Now I can figure out the master cylinder. So now I can figure out a master cylinder with a smaller bore that has like 2 outlets, one for the front, one for the rear, and basically hopefully solve my brake issue because I need something with a smaller bore. I'm looking at something maybe in a 3/4 or 7/8 bore down from like 1 1/8 or 1 1/4. But the problem is you'll notice how this master cylinder has like a very weird 3-bolt mounting pattern. There's one on each side and then one on the bottom. So now I need to figure out if there's a master cylinder that would line up with that, or do I just cut all of that out and rebuild, re-engineer the brake pedal system. Leaf springs in the front. That was partially due to time constraints, what could we get done quickly, and also just because we had these. These are Old Man Emu lift springs for a YJ, and you can see we did a shackle reversal. Put the spring hanger up front, put the shackle in the back instead of factory, which would have the shackle in the front. Why did we do that? Trying something different. Does it work better or worse than other setups? I think if you are doing spring under and you're kind of bombing along and the front end hits like a washout and the axle moves backwards as the springs compress, it works pretty good. I do get some major front axle wrap, so I need to kind of dive into that and figure out what is causing that. Is that the shackles? Is the springs too soft? What else? What is this thing right here? Somebody asked. That's for a winch mount. I have an old worn 8200, which is a worn upright winch, very similar to the 8274, but it came before that, and it came after the Bellevue. In fact, they only made this 8200 for a couple years, and the years that they made that, after that, let me get this straight. There you go. After they made the 8200, they switched it up, and now I have this really cool old winch, but I don't have the right motor for it. So I either need to get the motor rebuilt or find a replacement. Let me go through this list and see if there's anything else. Did we finish the transmission tunnel? Nope, there's still a big gaping hole where you can see the turbo 350. In fact, there's a huge list, which I'll read off before I end this video. It's on the front fender of all the stuff that I need to do. Air lockers. The rear air locker, I tested it yesterday. It seems to be working fine now. I don't know what the deal was, if I didn't have the hose pressed in all the way. The front locker is definitely leaking. And there's two options for why it would be leaking. There's a copper line that comes up to a fitting in the top of the axle housing. And if that copper line didn't get pulled in, lined up perfectly, it's leaking out around that. Hopefully that's the problem. If that's not the problem, I have to tear the whole axle down and look at the seals. Sometimes those seals can get screwed up, boogered up when it's all going together. Why is it bad on the freeway? The engine. This has a little Vortec V6 out of a S10 Blazer, and for some reason that engine is not running right. There's a IAC valve, which is like there's a whole bunch of stuff that could be wrong with it. I basically have done a bunch of research and I got a bunch of parts that I might need to replace. It feels like there's a vacuum leak somewhere. So I'm gonna kind of go through, change them, drive it, see if it fixes it. If it doesn't, come back, change the next thing. It has all new fuel injection, like the whole spider, that central intake. What's it called? I don't remember. There's a name for that kind of spider injection that goes in the intake. And for some reason that, I replaced that right off the bat, but I'm still having some sort of vacuum leak. So it doesn't want to run, like this thing should run like a raped ape, and it does not. It kind of just sputters. When you're off road, it chugs along just fine. But when you're on road, it doesn't do what it should do. It should be a fun little go-kart. Did we build this to be like Jimmy's? My buddy Jimmy Nyland, one of the very early episodes of Dirt Every Day, we interviewed him and saw his ugly Jeep. If you do like a search for ugly Jeep on the Motor Trend app under the Dirt Every Day shows. I've always loved his Jeep. This is similar in some ways. It has a kind of a lower windshield, but overall this Jeep sits a lot lower. I actually built this with influence from a lot of different Jeep builds. My buddy Rick Payway, my buddy John Kappa, Jimmy Nyland, my friend Brennan, there's a guy back east, Kane. Like all of these guys have kind of had some influence. Plus, my buddy Dave Chappelle likes to do air suspension, so I tried that. Overall, I just want to try different stuff. It has power steering. It has a V6 engine. It has a turbo 350 automatic transmission, which everybody's like, oh, old Jeep should have a manual. Well, probably should. In fact, the next one that I do, we'll definitely have a manual, but I want to just try stuff. It's easy to build the same Jeep that everybody's always built. It's harder to try things a little bit different. Like the front end is spring under. There was a trend at a point where everybody was putting their leaf springs above the axle to give you more lift. I like to keep it low, keep it squatted, keep it stable. I did almost lay the thing over in Moab. I was on a Jeep run after we finished the episode, and I got up on an obstacle and the whole thing flopped over on its side. And luckily it got to the sidewall of these big tires and it stopped for a split second. It just stopped right there. And before it could move anything, a bunch of guys jumped in and grabbed it, pulled it back onto its tire. It was pretty scary because I was like, I just finished this Jeep and I've had it out a week and I'm gonna wad the thing up, roll it over on a trail. And then after that I had some fuel issues. All of these things are just problems that you find when you build a Jeep really fast and you go four-wheeling. I still love the thing, it's a lot of fun. Am I gonna build rear fenders? I would like to. I have a friend, Sonny Honegger, another guy who greatly influenced this build, this flat fender build. He has like a really cool looking metal fender flare that he has on his flat fender. Kind of gives it that Jeep M715 pickup truck look. I might copy that. Why an auto instead of a manual? Just to try something different. Let's see. Anything else? What size tires? 35s. These are 35 1350 R15s. There used to only be 2 companies that make that size. Now there's only one, Toyo. Hopefully more people will make that, but unfortunately the 15-inch tire size, 15-inch wheel size tires, nobody's really making new stuff for that I've found, unless it's for UTVs, which is another interesting idea. Do you try and put UTV tires on a flat fender? It's small, it's lightweight, it's probably about the same weight-ish. Why an 18 and not a 300? A Dana 300 is another version of a Jeep transfer case that I could have used, but I went with the 18 because it kind of felt right for the flat fender, and I already had the offset Dana 44 rear, which was out of a M38A1, and the offset Dana 30 front, which is out of like a CJ5 from like the mid or early 70s. And I did have to run wheel spacers in the back because the rear was narrower than the front axle. I'm not always a big fan of wheel spacers, but if you're gonna run them, I get mine from Spider Tracks. I feel like they're some of the best in the business. Oh, did we have to modify the tub for the seats? No. Well, kind of. We did modify the tub. In fact, I'm going to turn this over here and keep talking while I lower this down. We did modify the tub. Oops. We modified the tub because there was a gas tank underneath the driver's seat that hung down, which was kind of like the military style and the GPW style. But I just cut all that out because that gas tank was all rusted out and full of varnish and garbage. And so the bottom of the tub right here is perfectly flat, where before it would hang down. But we didn't have to modify the rear fenders, which a lot of guys do when they go to put different seats in, to push the seats back. And the benefit of not having to do that, or by not doing that, we didn't have to modify the back. I'm also not very tall. I'm a whopping, I mean, I know I look on TV, I look like I'm about 6'8", but it's more like 5'8". So I didn't have to push the seat back a whole lot to fit in there. And then Dave, my co-host, he built this really cool bracket right in here to hold the seats. There's those seats I was talking about, the striker seats. I'll flip the hood down so it gets some more light on it. Here you can see where we shortened the hood, the windshield. And by we, I mean Dave. Dave cut that and shortened it, which gave it a really cool, low, kind of hot roddy look. Makes it look like a toy. The front hood has also been cut and the fender brought up and modified. And then Underneath here is that Vortec engine. Here's the whole list of stuff that it needs. There's a lot. Rear disc brakes, well, I did that. ARB leak, front and rear. Well, the front is still leaking, the rear is not. Mount the ARB, plumb the ARB, figure out the master cylinder, engine leaks. Is it the IAC, the distributor, the winch plate? The frame needs cleaned up, fix the toolboxes. There's just like a whole bunch of things. I've been chipping away at them here and there, but I also have more episodes of Dirt Every Day to make and 100 other projects around the shop. Thanks for tuning in to this first ever Dirt Daily. It took about 20 minutes, which was a lot longer than I expected, but it also hopefully answered a bunch of your questions, or maybe gave you more questions that you'll want answered in the future. Remember to tune into all the episodes of Dirt Every Day. You can get them on the Motor Trend app. It's like $3 a month or something. It's super cheap. It's less than like a cup of coffee. Speaking of which, I'm gonna sign off now and go get another cup of coffee because I got a long list of things I gotta finish on this truck, and then I gotta roll the next one in. Oh, and somebody asked about the Land Rover. You might see that in the future. Thanks everybody, see you next time.